Hello, Jess. Ekstrom. I am so excited to talk to you today. Before we hit record, I was just telling Jess that when I saw her publicist scheduled me this interview, I was like, oh my gosh, like wow. So I'm like feeling a little starstruck right now. I love this.
Oh my gosh, no, the feeling is mutual. I'm so excited to be here. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. So I want to talk about your book, The Bright Side. And for those of you who are seeing this on my YouTube channel, um, you can see this beautiful sign that she has. Otherwise, just for the listener, she's got this awesome The Bright Side, like in neon lights right behind her. And I think that is
Oh,
so
thank
cool.
you. The title of the book is actually Chasing the Bright Side, but I
Chasing
couldn't
the Bright
fit
Side.
fit all of that on the neon sign, so we just have the bright side.
Hey, it's all good. It's all good. So I want to talk about your book, Chasing the Bright Side. But before that, let's talk about Headbands of Hope. And I guess when I read about your story 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, I don't recall when it was, but I thought, wow, like you started this in your college dorm room and look at
Mhm.
you today. So talk about how you, as a college student, my son's in college right now. So anytime I hear a college student talking about starting a business, I'm so
Yeah.
impressed
Oh,
because most,
thanks.
I mean, I have a kid in college. He's the one who's, on the 5 year plan and I'm still proud of him. Doesn't matter. He's enjoying himself and all that. And he has that entrepreneurial mind, but most kids don't
Right.
think about starting a company, let alone something that you have done.
Well, it's funny that you say like most kids don't think about starting a company because that is spot on. I was not thinking. I was just doing. And I think that actually worked to my advantage that because of my young age, I like wasn't thinking about everything that could go wrong or how much time it would take or like what I was truly signing up for. I was like, oh, this seems like a good idea. Let's try it. And I was not your typical like overachiever, like quite the opposite. So just to kind of set the stage, but I was in college and I was interning for the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and I was seeing a lot of kids that were losing their hair to chemotherapy, and the response would be, offering them a wig or give them a hat, and I just kind of felt like it was sending a message that they should cover up their heads, like if they were losing their hair. And then I would see so many of them opt for buying their own headbands. They would wear these like colorful like flower crowns or bandanas, and I just remember thinking it was like the cutest thing and such a gesture of confidence that they wanted to like just restore their identity and not hide what they were going through. And so I remember like Googling, headbands for kids with cancer, and nothing came up. And so I call it the dumbest, smartest moment of my life where I was like, oh, well, if no one else is doing this, like, why not me? And so I started Headbands of Hope. For every headband sold, we donate one to a child with an illness. And we just had our 10-year anniversary in April. So that was 10 years ago. And we've officially donated millions of headbands, reaching every hospital in America in 22 countries now. But it was not like a here to there, A to B, like many entrepreneur stories. I had no idea what I was in for, but I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, yeah. So what was your biggest challenges when you first started out in your college dorm room?
I mean, like everything from what are taxes to like how do I start a website? And I think because I was a college student too, I had this mindset of like what's within my what's within my reach today versus sometimes as we get older we think about like what we don't have, and I was just thinking about what I did have. Okay, so I have access to professors. Okay, let me find a business professor to help me create a business plan. I needed a logo. I walked over to the graphic design school and like told a teacher that she should make a class assignment about creating a logo for Headbands of Hope, and I got to pick the best one, and that was how I got my logo. And so I was, pretty scrappy and resourceful with like what I had, but I would say the biggest mistake was had been working with this manufacturer that I found on this like database, of US manufacturers, and had been emailing and calling with them about creating the headband. And finally, after months of communication, they got back to me, or I sent them an email that I said I was ready to start, our first round of production. And so they were like, great. And they sent me over an invoice and it was for $10,000. And I
Oh
was
my
like,
gosh.
no way is that happening. But I think at the time, I was also one of the, blessing and a curse of being 18, 19 years old was I also felt like I couldn't push or negotiate or ask questions because I was just so like, oh, I'm just happy they're working with me. And so I think I remember like Googling, like, how do I get $10,000 for my business? And two ways came up. I could get a loan from, the bank, apply for a business loan and pay interest, or I could try to get an investor, give away equity. And I was coming home for Thanksgiving break, and my dad had started a business as well. And I was talking to him about these two different options, like a loan or an investment. And he was like, look, I've seen your business plan. I actually think you have a really good idea. I don't want you to give away too much equity too early, like I did. And I want to be your first investor. Like I will front you. I know, so sweet. I will front you the $10,000 and I want to be the first investor in your business. And I was so excited. I shook his hand. I ran to the bank, wired this company $10,000, and I never heard from them again. Yeah.
No. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
It was awful. It was like one of those left or right moments where I could have easily been like, yep, this isn't for me. Let me go apply for jobs and pretend like this never happened. Um, but I think, when I go back to that moment, I mean, obviously we went to court and tried to get the money back and all that stuff, but I think about how what dug my heels into the ground was that Headbands of Hope was a solution to a problem, not a business I wanted to start. So I
Right.
like to call it like when you have an itch, if you have like an itch in between your shoulder blades and you like can't scratch it, it drives you crazy. You know, your business or the thing that you create should be a scratch to an itch. And so kids not feeling good about themselves after losing their hair to chemotherapy, like that was my itch. That was my problem that I wanted to solve. Headbands of Hope, which provide headbands to kids with cancer to boost their confidence. That was my scratch. That was my solution. So I think the reason why I kept going and I figured it out was not because I was like, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur, but it was because there was an itch that I needed to scratch.
I've talked to quite a few entrepreneurs, and actually, I think I've talked to two others so far that started a business out of their college dorm room. And that's what it is. There's a solution that
Yeah.
you want to provide.
Yeah. And it can be such a small thing too. It can be
Yeah.
a solution to your school or your community, or even if something out there already exists, but it's not the way that you want it, like chances are there's thousands of other people who are looking for that same version that you are. And so I feel like that's along with Headbands of Hope and any venture, whether it's a book or a business or a course that I've created, has always been, a scratch to an itch. And that's when I think your resilience kicks in, is not when you like want to win or you want to earn. It's when you want to solve, like that you're solving a problem.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. And that's what this podcast is all about. Right?
Yes. I
And
love it. On
and that
brand.
was a great segue to your book, Chasing the Bright Side. But I still want to ask a few questions about
Yeah.
Headbands of Hope, because it's such an incredible journey that you've been on. And just the fact that you've helped so many children. And then, of course, adults too, because you also sell other things, other products for adults, right?
Yeah.
But so tell me about your first, walk me through the first time you were giving a headband to a child, and how did that make you feel? What was that like for you?
Well, I started giving away headbands before I was actually selling them,
Okay.
which, is like the model is you buy one and we give one. But I so badly wanted to start giving them out just to see, like, is this working? Is this something that they truly want? and to be able to capture those moments and those stories so that I can be connect the dots for people who are shopping and
Right.
how a headband really does help. And so I remember I had shipped some headbands to a hospital and put a note in there, as to what they were for. And I got a letter back a few weeks later from a parent who, with a photo like enclosed in it, and she said that her daughter was in remission, from chemotherapy, and she was supposed to start kindergarten in the upcoming weeks. And up until that point, she hadn't wanted to go to kindergarten. She was dreading it. She thought, because her hair hadn't grown back yet, that all the kids in class would think that she was a boy and make fun of her. And they were in the hospital today for a checkup, and she got a headband, and she got home from the hospital and laid out her like kindergarten outfit and all of her school supplies. She was like, "Mom, when do we start kindergarten?" And that letter just told me, like, you gave my child the confidence to be herself and want to go to kindergarten. And that's like the moment that solidified, like, oh, this is gonna work. I don't know when, I don't know how, I don't know what it's gonna take, but I know that it will.
That's amazing. And I'm sitting here holding back the tears because I'm that must have just been so rewarding for you to read.
Oh, so
I
rewarding. And
mean,
the amount of letters that we get like that now is amazing. And I call it our smile file. So it's like keeping
yeah,
all these like photos and letters and moments that just remind us of the itch that we're scratching, and
yeah.
because sometimes, running a business is still running a business, no matter how good it is and how, bright it is, there's still going to be so many highs and lows. So if you can kind of keep a collection of like reminding you, like connecting the work to the why, it's just so important in anything that you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. And that's really great in life too. I
Hmm.
know like
Absolutely.
when my journey, when I was publishing my book and everything, and I have a couple of girlfriends that I would get a card in the mail and I hold on to those. I have them like in arm's reach
Hmm.
because it's so great to see that to help you to keep moving forward, to keep propelling
Yeah.
you, to have that cheer that something to just keep you going, right?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We have to keep those things front and center and just remind ourselves, what it all is pointing towards.
Right, right. So now you've donated well over 1 million.
Hmm.
And I think that's really amazing just in the United States that it's gone to every single hospital. I mean,
Yeah,
how incredible is that?
yeah. And, we expanded our mission to not just kids with cancer, but kids with illnesses. And because what we realized going into the hospitals was, no matter if kids were suffering or experiencing, hair loss or whatever it might be, this was just a really fun accessory that made such an impact on confidence, no matter where they were at or no matter what they were in for. It just kind of gave them a reason to smile and like a reason to hope. And so now we donate, to all hospitalized children and kids with illnesses and just boys and girls, and find that it's just such a fun distraction and, disruption to like what can be a really hard time.
Right. All right. Your book, Chasing the Bright Side: Embrace Optimism, Activate Your Purpose, and Write Your Own Story. I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, I can definitely some similarities to your book, which is awesome.
Yes, absolutely. So what inspired you? What was that itch that you needed to scratch with your book?
I think I was really tired of the typical success story of like one day I had this idea and the next day, we're just sold out and I can't keep it in stock, or like, oh, I just worked really hard and now I'm the president and CEO. And it was just none of it was relatable. It made me feel like I was missing something, or that I was alone. I talked about losing that $10,000. I thought I was literally the only person messing up trying to start a business. And then it wasn't until I met so many other entrepreneurs who were like, even, Olympic athletes, or I was doing a lot on the speaking circuit and just meet people who have amounted to something. And I learned that it's like, oh, they all mess up and they all had no idea what they were doing. And they all, had scrappy seasons. And so like, what's the commonality? Why are these people here? Versus people that believe failure and stuff is the end. And that single like through line that I would find is optimism, believing that this is a scratch to an itch, and like believing that what they're doing is making something better. And so that was chasing the bright side was a way that I could show people that it's not about skill set. It's not about expertise. It's not about all these things that we kind of like wait until we have them in order to begin. It's about believing that what you're doing is making something even just 1% better. Like it doesn't have to be groundbreaking, just a little bit better than it was before. So chasing the bright side is like my deep dive into optimism and how we can actually train our brains to be optimistic, because I'll also say that I'm not naturally an optimist. In fact, I have to work at it. Like my husband is totally an optimist, just like by nature. He wakes up every day is like, the sun is shining, the tank is clean. And I'm like, sometimes can be more negative or catch myself in these like mental spirals. And so I've had to work on it, and I've had to find tricks, and I've had to find these kind of rewiring of my brain to train it to be optimistic. And so that's what this book is about, is sharing that.
I love that, because I talk about shifting our perspective, which is very similar, in that, we always have that choice. And I'm glad that you were, shared with us some vulnerabilities, and not like, yes, I'm this optimistic person and now I'm going to write a book about it, because that's more real. I think people can really relate more to that than just preaching, this is what you do or whatever. And quite frankly, I'm the same way. And I always have to tell people, I do a lot of podcast interviews as well. And I said, like, yeah, I'm a happiness and mindset coach, but am I happy all the time? No, I'm not. And I'm a very normal human being,
Yeah.
I aspire to be happy, and I choose happiness every day. Am I happy 100% of the time? Absolutely not. Because it's not realistic.
Yeah. And if you told everyone that you were, people would say, there's no way. And one of the things that
smoking.
Yeah, exactly. What are you smoking, and where can I get some? It would be my answer. But in I have a course called Mic Drop Workshop, and it teaches women how to become paid keynote speakers.
Nice.
And one of the things that I teach in the course when thinking about their story is like, when you teach the lesson, share the moment when you were the student, because like oftentimes the biggest things that we learn are from the times where we didn't understand it or we did it wrong. And so much of like my keynote and my talk today that I share at schools is not like about making myself, look good or accomplished. It's like the $10,000, that I lost, or these other times where I learned a lesson by being the student. And so I think that that's where we can truly help people whenever we're put in a position of power or given a microphone. Is like, when was the time that we learned what we now know today, and how can we help people learn from our mistakes?
Love it. And that's so critical. So what's the best advice you've ever received that helped keep you going, let's say?
That's a great question. The best advice I've ever received. This is going to sound like probably counterintuitive, but just that, like, no one's thinking about you. And that can either be a huge disappointment or a huge relief. And to me, it's like a huge relief, because so often, like, we move through our world like we're being watched, like we're in a fishbowl of like, what is Jess going to do today? And it's like, no one's thinking that. No one's wondering that. And so to have this freedom of like, oh, everyone is focused on themselves. No one's thinking about me as much as I think they are. It gives me like freedom to fail, freedom to try, freedom to just like find myself, and I think that is one of the most like freeing pieces of advice that truly shifted not just the way I think, but the way I live.
Yeah, I love that because I think we worry too much about what other people think of us. And quite
Yeah,
frankly,
they're
one, what
not.
other people
Yeah.
think about, yeah, what other people think about me is none of my business. But number two, nobody's thinking about me.
Exactly, exactly. And, especially living in this digital world where, like, oftentimes the people who don't know you might be the loudest, or, someone doesn't agree with the post or something that you said. And it's just like, there is so much reason to that we give ourselves to like perform for all the people who aren't actually the ones that matter, the most. And so, yeah, just like no one's thinking about you, which is, like I said, can be a relief or a disappointment. But to me,
Yeah.
it's a relief. Yeah.
It is a huge relief. And I think too many
Mhm.
people especially the younger generation, I think, because they only know social media. They grew up
Yeah.
like you and me didn't have as much. You probably a little
Right.
bit more
Yeah.
than me, but me for sure. And I can't even imagine it, because they really do. They get so wrapped up in how many people like it and how many
Yeah.
people comment. And yeah. So what's the worst advice you've ever received?
I would say the worst advice I've ever received is something along the lines of um like keep preparing or keep learning or keep studying, or like almost like stay in the planning phase instead of transitioning to the doing phase. Um, like it's almost like that one side then I mindset. Like once I, learn this, then I can do the thing I want to do. Or once I achieve this, then I can feel the way I want to feel. And so, to the advice that I've gotten that's like, well, you need to do this in order to do that. Sometimes that rings true, but sometimes, the best way to actually get there is just by like starting, and I'm so glad that I started my business when I was 19. Like I made so many mistakes, but I wouldn't want it any other way because I learned through action instead of through planning. And our plans are going to change anyway, so we might as well make progress and learn along the way.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more on that. All right. So back to your book. I love the introduction, and Jess lists some of her core beliefs. And there's a couple that really stand out to me. And I love that you say my dog completely understands when I speak to him in full sentences, because my dog
He
does
does.
too.
Yep. Fully
100%.
understands. I love it.
Yellow traffic lights mean you floor it. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
That's
Don't
it.
take my advice. Just, right.
Yep. There's much better advice in the book rather than flooring it at yellow
But
traffic lights. Yeah.
I love that. And I read that before you joined. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's amazing. Like, because it really just, I love that you started your book that way, because it really just shows that you are human. You have a great sense of humor. And I love that you started it that way, because I think it just kind of brings you down to just, you're just like everybody else. Right.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. I feel like so much of the self-help world is like speaking down, where I want to speak to people. So I definitely wanted to set the tone as I started my book. So I'm glad you appreciated that.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Awesome. So what else would you like to share with the audience before we close up the interview?
I would just say, with Headbands of Hope, I think that one of the biggest things I want people to learn from this company is that small acts of kindness can make such a big impact. I mean, we give out headbands, which might seem so small. We're not like sending people to college or, whatever it might be, but it makes such a difference. And so, I hope that you can look at like what we've started and think of like, how can you apply it to your world, or what are the small things that you can offer someone else that can make a big difference in their day. And so that's really what I hope. I hope people, keep buying lots of headbands, and I hope the company continues to grow. But I also hope that it's an example of just small things can make a big difference.
It's huge. It's a huge example. And I just saw, I forget the gentleman's name who started Bob's, the footwear.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yes. He was just on Shark Tank. Well, I
Oh,
don't know
cool.
if it may have been a repeat episode. I don't keep
Yeah.
up with it, but I love that he kind of, I don't know if he was the first one that did it, but it was certainly that business model has just shown. And I think that's what I loved about your company, because it was that same business model. And I think that just more people need to stop worrying about the bottom line so much, and what can I do to help other people and still have my business,
Yeah, absolutely.
right?
Couldn't
You
agree
can do
more.
both.
Yeah, you can do both. You shouldn't have to choose between making a living and making a difference. Like, do it both at once.
Love it. Well, Jess, it's been such
Yeah.
an honor to have you. I've loved this
Thanks,
conversation, and I
Sandy.
wish you nothing but the best. And
Me
thank you.
thanks for
Thank
having me.
you. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
what you're doing now. I love it.
Thank you.